Hello there! What's up? I'm Begalius. Check it out. It's me. I'm Begalius. So listen, let's do an old one. Let's do an oldie, but a goldie, I guess. Is it a goldie? I guess we'll find out if you keep watching this video, you find out whether it's a goldie. This is a Plague Tale Requiem. And I didn't really play this back in 2022 because it came out pretty much exactly the same time as Modern Warfare 2 in 2022. God, even referencing the name of that game in other videos is absurd. But yeah, it came out around about the same time. Didn't really try it, so I decided to give it a go now. And I've got to say, it's a doozy. It's very confusing. Every now and then a game will pop up that sort of makes me question the review process itself and like how subjective or how objective I want to be and how I want to approach a review. And with this one, I think it definitely raises the question of like how important is it that the game is good versus how important is it that I had a good time? It's hard to quantify, but like, is it more important that I had a good time with the game, or is it more important that I came away from the game thinking, that's a very solid game? Because in this situation, I think this game is good. It is a very good video game, good at what it does and what it sets out to do. I can't say I had a very good time with this though, and I can't say I finished it. To be honest with you, I actually couldn't get through this one because I got about, I don't know how long in, a fair way in, and I just sort of threw my arms up and I was like, I'm just not having fun here. So let's go through it. Let's describe the game and why it's so puzzling to me. And I think the reason it's puzzling is because, like I said, on the surface it's great. You look at it, it's a beautiful game, and I think some of the gameplay elements are cool here and there, but we're going to talk about that. I think the narrative's great. Overall, it's a bit of a slam dunk. I mean, it's a single player, it's an adventure game, it has a good story, good characters. But in terms of gameplay, on its surface, this is just a puzzle game. This is literally no more. It is purely a puzzle game. And it has like this weird sort of tease, this dangle in front of your head that there is combat. But there isn't, that kind of isn't at the same time. The combat, you would think, and I initially thought, is stealth. And you may watch this and go, that's stealth combat. And I will say, by the way, that I very much intend on putting a clip in here of what the game would consider to be combat, but even then I want you to question what's going on there. So on the surface, you may say to yourself like, oh, that's stealth gameplay, but it's also kind of not, because in stealth gameplay the whole point is that you sleuth behind an enemy and then you take them out without everybody else knowing. That's not what's happening here, because you can't really, in most situations, quote unquote, take out the enemy. You can't really do that. The only way to go up behind someone and completely take them out is if you have a knife, if you have like one of these knives that you find around in the world, and they are very, very few and far between, and the number of those nowhere near matches up the number of actual enemies out there. You are very, very infrequently and very rarely going to be able to use one of these knives. You're basically going to have to use one of the other options, which is either sleuth past or get the rats to kill the enemies, and in doing so you would have to, as far as I got, you have to have this like slingshot bolt which extinguishes their torches that they're walking around carrying, and when that's extinguished the rats go for them, because the whole point of this game is like, it's not your average adventure game. The whole like stick to this game, the whole USP is that there are these rats that like are infesting, they're not investing, there's no Bitcoin here, they're infesting the world, and you have to try not to get eaten by all of these rats by staying near the fire, because the rats won't get anywhere near the fire. And of course, the presentation of it could not be kind of silly and very unrealistic, but I think they do a pretty good job of presenting that. But yeah, you have to go from fire to fire to fire to fire in order to stay alive, because if you don't, you're just going to get eaten alive by the rats. And so the same goes for the enemies. The way to take these out is to extinguish their flames and have the rats attack them. If needs must, you can also burn them alive, but again, this is quite difficult. You can't just burn an enemy alive. I found the easiest way to do this is to lure them into some like grass and then burn them alive, and that will take them down. But aside for that, That's pretty much it. Other than that, there is no way to take these guys down. You are going to have to go past them, which I guess technically, yes, would be stealth. But when there's no real option in the majority of situations to just take the guys out in a stealthy way, I just don't consider that to be combat. So this game actually doesn't have combat. And when you really think about what I just described, the way to do that, is that not in and to itself a puzzle? Because the whole point of the game is like, okay, you have to do this in other stealth games. You have to like figure out the route that an enemy is taking, or like what they're going to do next, or how to get them to do what you want them to do. In this game, that's a necessity. It's the only way to do it, and the only thing you really can do in most situations is to like learn their pattern and learn what they're going to do next, and then follow on to that with some sort of technique. So I just don't. I consider even that to be a puzzle. On top of the fact that moving from place to place because of this fire system is the same. You have to figure out ways to get from one place to the next, how to continuously have fire throughout the entire time. And I'm talking like through a good 90% of the game this is the case. It makes it very liberating when it isn't, but through most of this game you are figuring out how to get from fire to fire to fire to fire, and how to get past or take out these enemies without actually, without knocking them out, figuring out various methods for taking them out. And that may sound super fun to you. That may sound really cool. It may sound like something you absolutely want to sink your teeth in. Sink your teeth in. Christ. I'm sorry, I've been working all day. It may strike you as something that you might want to sink your teeth into. It might be super fun for you, and that's fantastic. But for me, the constant puzzles, it doesn't let up ever. You're just constant, and if you're not trying to figure out how to go from fire to fire to fire to fire, or figuring out how to take on enemies, you're figuring out some kind of like water puzzle, or a puzzle for getting across bridges, or a puzzle for how much of this to do to this to get to here. There's a puzzle in every single aspect of this game. I cannot explain it to you nearly enough. And the game has the gall to have like a skill tree system that it absolutely doesn't need, because none of this is viable. None of the combat stuff is viable. And like I said, there will be gameplay of combat in here. And ask yourself if that is real combat, or whether I'm just figuring out what to do. Because even during the intense combat situation that they throw you into, you're like blowing up these boxes of things to like fly in their face, and then you can, I don't know, it's like you have to figure out a way around, and it's just, to me, not overly appealing. I will say though, like I said, you may find that to be very interesting to you, very enticing to you, and also the presentation for this is fantastic. This may be the best puzzle game I've ever played, because the window dressing, the wrapping around that they do in this puzzle game is absolutely exceptional. They really do make it feel like a full-on AAA adventure game, when in reality all you're doing is no more than you would in an old like PS1 puzzle game, from when you go from place to place to place to place. So it's very, very impressive that they managed to wrap this all around in such an excellent package. It is a beautiful game. There is a huge sense of adventure, and if you're into figuring out how to take on the enemies, then they do a good job of servicing that, and it does have a great story and a cool soundtrack, and there's a lot going on here. They really do a lot, but it's not for me, and I couldn't finish this one. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll come back to it. Maybe I'll change my mind. But for now, that's what I think. And for now, here is the score. Okay, I'm going to go now, and I'll see everyone later.
The PlayStation's only $149, and you can also get leading titles.